Hello everyone, this is Dowster and welcome to another episode review of Dark Side of the Ring, episode 9. I only need this review and the Marty Jannetty one to wrap up season 4, but I plan to do the other seasons and Dark Side of the 90s and 2000s, even the comedies part, since I really like learning the psychology of people and talking about it. Also, I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, so I could give a close insight of what happened in each of those times. Thank you guys for your patience and support as the season ended a week or two ago. I have been studying for a test and it's caused me a long pause with releasing videos on time. I should be uploading more in September for the Halloween season and will be working on the Bray Wyatt, Tony Bennett, and Sinead O'Connor videos as well. Anyway, back to today's episode. It will be about WCW World Championship Wrestling and their pay-per-view of Bash at the Beach in 2000. I never watched WCW before, but I have heard of it through WWE and how they bought it. In today's episode, it seems to focus on Hulk Hogan, who was a part of the infamous NWO, Vince Russo, and Eric Bischoff. I'm going to do the best that I can to tell all sides of their stories and share my thoughts at the end. Vince Russo has a cussing mouth, so trigger warning for those that don't like bad words when you're watching this episode. In the beginning of this episode, Vince says that the wrestling business is the worst place and that people there are awful because they will eat you alive as if you were shark bait. From the start, Vince Russo was in the wrestling business as a writer since 1991 for about 32 years. Back then in the 90s, WWF, now WWE, and WCW were competing for the Monday Night TV spot. Eric Bischoff, who was an important figure and manager in WCW, had the wrestling shows live instead of taped like WWF would do. He wanted WCW to have a different view that was close to reality. Eric had Hulk Hogan be the face of WCW, as he said that where Hogan goes, he goes, because Hogan brings in the money. With that, Eric was proud to beat WWF to dust, as WCW ratings were skyrocketing. The higher they got, the bigger the ego also got. Russo thought it was best to have WWF be similar to Crash TV as a means to have everything big, explosive, and shocking, with shock value. When asked if Vince Russo harmed the wrestling business during the taping of this episode, journalist Dave Meltzer says yes. For those who do not know, but probably do, Dave has done wrestling coverage since the 70s. Before joining WCW, Vince Russo was frustrated with WWF because of not being too close to his family, while Eric was let go of the Turners, who owned the Turner Company, which is a part of WCW, in 1999. It eventually gets rehired. Vince Russo talks to Vince McMahon if his family can be close to where WWF was, but supposedly, McMahon tells Russo to hire a nanny since Russo makes a lot of money. Russo gets really upset by this since he said that being an Italian man, it's all about family. So he leaves WWF and gets hired by WCW soon after. From there, Russo reimagines Monday Night Nitro, which was a part of WCW, by being more extreme with shock value. They showed a clip in Dark Side of the Ring where Rey Mysterio Jr., who we now know as Rey Mysterio, legend, today was a heel and unmasked in WCW as he said on the mic, "We are going to hump you like the dogs that we are." I really hope I don't get in trouble with YouTube because of this. But this was WCW during the Russo days, so yeah. On March 1999, Vince Russo said that the WCW ratings were going up, but Dave says they were going down by a little. The management decides to go in a different direction by having Russo and Bischoff work together, but Eric never watched the recent work Russo did for WCW when he was let go temporarily. Eric said during this episode that working with Russo was a match made in heaven or hell. Lance Storm said that Russo wanted Lance to be Eric's legitimate son, but Eric was 10 years older than Lance, which would not make sense. Eric thinks that Vince did not see instincts and talents within the wrestlers as Russo was writing the storylines for WCW. He also says that Vince Russo was motivated by attention. Russo, on the other hand, wanted to push younger talent, but Bischoff wanted the veterans to be pushed too. WCW ratings were going down a couple months later, so Eric and Russo had an idea to put the backstage drama in the WCW locker rooms as a storyline instead. Russo had the idea of the Millionaires Club, which is the veterans, versus the younger ones, which was the younger talent. The idea was for the younger talent to shine. It did not win the audience over, and the ratings were still bad. Even Dave thought it was bad that he could not remember it, supposedly. At that point, Eric said he was done with Russo. Before Eric and Vince were to meet at Bash at the Beach, Hulk is said to have mistrusted Russo. Eric's connection with Hulk Hogan was close, as he knew when Hulk was mad, sad, and sensitive, as Hulk wanted things his own way. He's also very sensitive about being called bald, even though he was losing hair at the time. Russo called Brad Siegel, who was an executive producer for WCW at the time, and told Brad to have Eric be in charge of talent, but Brad would rather have Vince continue to be in charge. Vince said that in this episode, he and the others who worked backstage for WCW had a meeting about who they wanted to have the belt at Bash at the Beach, and they all agreed for Booker T to have the WCW World Heavyweight title. At this time, Jeff Jarrett had the WCW title and would face Booker T for it at Bash at the Beach. However, Jeff would face Hulk first before the pay-per-view, but Russo said that Hogan was not going to get the title as he and Creative had decided to have Booker T win it at the pay-per-view. Vince told Hulk Hogan that he was not walking out with the WCW World Heavyweight title. Eric and Hulk were not happy with Vince's choice, as Hulk had a lot of creative control in his WCW contract. Hulk Hogan was signed up to WCW by Eric in 1994 and got a good deal that if Hogan were to lose, he did not have to lose. Jeff says that if someone has complete creative control, it creates a conflict of interest where the wrestler cares about their own self or the business. Russo said that at first he gave Hulk a script where Hulk looked really strong like King Kong, but Hulk rejected the idea. Russo rewrites it and has Hulk beat up Jeff Jarrett and Scott Steiner but does not get the title. Vince supposedly said that Hulk was okay with the second script. Eric then goes to Russo and tells him that Hulk was not going to do this after all. So all three men go to a trailer to talk. Eric said that he and Vince went over this discussion several times, but Hogan, however, wanted to win the title. Eric and Hogan thought it was a good idea to have Hogan win the title, walk off in anger, and have a competition to have the wrestlers compete for the vacant title in Halloween Havoc. But Hogan makes a surprise appearance in order to show that he still has the title. Russo, though, refuses to give Hulk the title. The morning of Bash at the Beach, Russo tells Jeff of their idea for Hulk to get laid down. Jeff did not approve of Vince's idea as it could make things worse, and tells Russo that everyone loses in this scenario, which he was right about later on. Jeff had doubts and felt awful about Vince's ridiculous unplanned idea because not only was this risky, but he felt that it could ruin his family's reputation. When it was time for the match against Hogan, Jeff stayed in the back with doubts as his entrance music was playing 2 or 3 times. Jeff felt that Hulk orchestrated the whole thing and never looked at Hulk the same way. Once he came to the ring, Jeff laid down while Russo had the belt in his hands and threw it to the ring. Hulk then to Mike and tells Russo that the company has been going down under because of Russo. Hogan and Eric leave with the belt and celebrate while Jeff walks away angry. Russo then cuts a promo that same night and things get worse for Hogan and Bischoff. In the promo, Russo tells the audience how Hulk wanted to play the creative control card and did not care about the audience. He also says that the audience will never see Hogan and that Jeff is still champion and would be facing Booker T as he had planned from the meeting he just had that same month. Hogan received word about Russo's promo. He got really angry but stayed quiet. In this episode, Russo says that Hogan walking off with the title, Jeff laying on the ring, and Russo having to cut the promo was the plan he discussed with Eric and Hulk, but Eric denies it. Eric said it was the most unprofessional thing that he has ever witnessed. After the explosive promo, Hulk takes legal action of breach of contract and defamation. The judge, however, thought it was ridiculous since this was a wrestling storyline and that Hulk was filing a lawsuit on characters presented on TV, not his real self, Terry Bollea. Vince said that the court eventually threw Hogan's claim. Fictional characters cannot be defamed in court. Meltzer says that Hogan was a face of failure and that there was nothing left for him to do as he could not draw ratings anymore. Eric calls Meltzer a scumbag because he thinks that Meltzer hates Hogan. Hogan tried to get out of the contract but wanted to get a paycheck as well after leaving WCW. The Turner Company settled and gave Hogan around 7 figures. Jeff says that Hogan cashed out and that the company gave Hogan everything, which is true, by the way. WCW was bought out by Vince McMahon eventually because the producers wanted out fast. Jeff thinks that Russo does what the viewers want to see, while Eric has no regrets. At the end of this episode, Vince Russo said that he does not hate anyone, but he did say in the beginning of the episode that he is better than Eric and despises him. He advises the audience to never go into the wrestling business. Interviewers for this episode are Jeff Jarrett, Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo, Dave Meltzer, and Lance Storm. My thoughts on this episode are mostly negative. Aside from the TNA or the Impact drama, I feel pretty bad for Jeff Jarrett as he got stuck in all this mess and did not want to get involved with the drama. I agree with a lot of things he said in this episode, such as Hulk selling out to WCW and the audience. Jeff seemed like he wanted to do the right thing, but he was not in the position to do so except Russo. As for Dave, Vince Russo, and Eric, they all sounded really full of themselves. I heard from people that Dave Meltzer's old school and that his information is not always accurate. He seems to think his opinions are always right, which not everyone's opinions are always right, by the way. Heck, even mine are probably wrong too, but we are entitled to our own opinions, even though sometimes some of us might be right. Vince Russo, on the other hand, seems like he has a loud personality, but I do think he hates a lot of people, even though at the end of this episode he said that he does not. I know for a fact that Jim Cornette really hates Vince Russo, and that I saw a clip somewhere where Jim said that if Vince Russo were to die, Jim would urinate in Vince's gravestone. But I was surprised they did not have Jim Cornette on there, considering, I'm guessing maybe it was just too much. He did give us some great wrestling storylines, but the Owen Hart thing, that was very tragic, although it was an accident. I mean, it might have been Vince Russo's fault, but I don't know. Russo comes off as an angry man as he says the wrestling business is bad. But I think the problem with the wrestling business in his time was that it was too greedy and you had to suck it up compared to today. Also, what was up with Vince Russo saying bro? Like, isn't he in his 50s, 60s? Like, aren't you a little too old to be saying bro? I know Matt Riddle uses bro, but I don't know if it's an Italian thing or it's just something he just likes to say. As for Eric, I will say he was a great heel manager on TV, especially when he and John Cena had that angle when he got drafted to Raw. This episode made me dislike him a little because of the way he managed Hulk Hogan. Reminds me of that awful time when Brock Lesnar had the WWE title but hardly defended it. At the time, Brock was managed by Paul Heyman, and it reminds me of Eric and Hulk, although I think Hulk was probably greedier and more self-centered back then. Eric kind of gave too much control to Hulk, and I think Hulk abused that power because in this episode, Eric said that Hulk had the choice of winning or losing. Wish we had gotten Hogan's input on this too, but I think with Eric it was enough. And yes, I agree with Jeff. I think when a wrestler obtains full creative control, it always backfires and seems careless. It just happened with CM Punk in AEW as he was recently fired. I always hear people and wrestlers saying how John Cena held back talent, but I think Hulk Hogan was far worse and negative than Cena. At least Booker T won the title and lived to tell his 5-time reigns, as shown on SmackDown with the whole 5-time. I think the problem with wrestlers who gain full creative control also is that people like Hulk Hogan and CM Punk always lead to trouble and a lot of anger issues, but also a lot of missed opportunities for the other wrestlers, their co-workers who deserve the push. You look at today's wrestlers such as Kofi Kingston, Big E, and Matt Hardy, who barely got a big push after years of working in the wrestling business and finally obtaining the WWE title, or in Matt's case, the Impact title. The same could be said about Brock Lesnar, when he barely came to the WWE shows but still had that title. I don't know how much control Brock had at the time, but he seemed to have a lot back then. I'm just glad he's not doing that anymore, but like I said, having 100% creative control can really take over one's mind. Hulk's a jerk in this episode, and I hope he's learned his lesson. He did apologize for saying the N-word, but New Day doesn't accept it. I honestly don't know whether to like Hulk Hogan or not, but comment down below on your thoughts of Hulk Hogan. Mine are very mixed at this moment, but I give this episode a 7 out of 10 as it felt like who had the bigger ego type of episode. Also, if you want me to do a video on my thoughts of CM Punk's firing, comment down below too. It might trigger some not so friendly wrestling fans out there, just in case you guys are wondering. But thank you guys for watching, and thank you for all your support and all your help and being very open about your liking to my videos. I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye guys.